What's up, filmmakers? How you doing? This is John Fuentes. Welcome back to Big Films, the home of action-packed blockbuster filmmaking. Today we're going to discuss how you use the VFX files from the Blockbuster Starter Pack in Filmora. So let's go. Let's get started. Hey guys, thanks for joining me here and welcome to Big Films tutorial here in Wondershare Filmora. Today we have a real fun one, so we're going to jump right into it. As you can see, I got Filmora open up here, and as I kind of scrub through my timeline, you might recognize this video clip from our website of our promo video from the Blockbuster Starter Pack highlighting the electricity and the Thor scene. You know, so some people were super excited about this and they asked us how did we create this scene, so we're going to use this one in this tutorial here. So as you can see, right out in the middle of the field, we have our incredible actor. His name is Special K, who came to save the day. So he's here holding our hammer up. He's very static in this scene as the camera kind of rotates around him. And little side note, he actually took our directorial notes to the heart here. He held that pose for a long time. You know, so this is a very Oscar award-winning performance here. So he's looking like the Statue of Liberty here, and just like the Statue of Liberty, he's going to welcome us to an awesome tutorial. So we're going to scroll right up to the beginning of our scene here, and this is where we're going to drop in our first lightning effect. So we're looking at what the action is happening here, right? So he's thrusting the hammer towards the sky. He's commanding the lightning to come down here, right? So this is where we want to drag and drop the effect right into our timeline. So I go to my effects folder, and as you can see, I already have my effects in there, nice and saved, looking all good and organized. And my very first effect is I want to drop the lightning in. So I kind of click on this and I can review here in my viewfinder the details of the effect just to make sure that it is the right effect for me and my scene. So I just drag and drop it right into my timeline, kind of just trim it down to the scene here, and it's already looking pretty cool right there. He's hammer up, boom, lightning's coming down, looking nice. So as I look at this scene here, right here in the viewfinder, I notice that the lightning is coming in from right to left, and for me, cinematically, it's kind of like the wrong screen direction here, right? So it's like, I feel like we need to change it, and one way to change that is when you double click on your VFX file, an effects control panel kind of comes up here. So coming in from right to left is the wrong screen direction. What I want to do is rotate this around just like that and kind of bring it in like that, and as you can already see, it has a little bit more of a dynamic feel here coming from left to right. So screen direction in your narrative, in your films, and how you edit is extremely important. Think about how your audience is going to experience your scene or the effect that you're trying to achieve here, the same way you felt when you watched a promo video and you thought, oh my god, this is so awesome, I want to learn how to do that. So screen direction is important, and that's something that you want to keep in mind in your filmmaking here. So now we sort of gonna center this here to where the hammer is at, right? So the lightning is coming down, it's gonna hit the hammer, it's like boom, that's looking really nice. Awesome sauce, right? When I'm looking at the lightning now, I'm like, okay, this looks pretty good, but the glow itself, we can make this look more realistic or more organic to the scene itself as well. So this is a really nice, awesome glow, and it can use a lot of applications of how you can use this in your films. But for this purpose, I want to change this sort of glow. So one way you can do that is come to your blend modes here in your effects panel. You can see that it's set to normal, and that's what we're looking at. It's in the normal view. So we want to set that to screen, and when we set it to screen, you can see sort of the glow kind of changes a bit, right? It looks a little bit more natural to the scene here, and it's looking really sweet. So blend modes is a fun tool to use when you're working with lights or glows or smoke and stuff like that. You can play with the blend modes, and it can kind of blend into your scene a little bit better. But where you don't want to use blend modes is in when you're working with solid matter like rocks or a car or weapons or a building. You don't want to play with the blend modes in that, because you might lose some of the details of the effect itself. So that's a little side note for when you're messing with our effects and you're kind of building your scenes with some of our other effects and other packs. But if you got lightning or glows or lasers and stuff like that, blend modes are really cool to mess with here. All right, so let's continue building our scene. So what's happening here, right? So lightning's coming down, is making contact with the hammer. What's happening to the hammer, right? There's sort of like a reaction going on here. In the Blockbuster Starter Pack, again, in our electricity folder, you can see that we have a lot of different choices of things that we can use there. And I think in this case we like this here, right? So it's like something's happening, or it makes contact and smoke, kind of like a little explosion with some lightning in it, which is pretty awesome. we kind of drag and drop that right down into our file here. Just trim it to size, and you can see here it's like boom, there it is. Like it's like, wow, that's pretty cool. Okay, so now we want to do is center this right over a hammer, and you can see since we further away from him in his bird's eye view, he's looking kind of small on the open field there, right? So we don't want to have like an overwhelming effect. We want to kind of maybe like kind of squeeze it down a bit, center it. For me, I like it like that. For you know, this is an artistic choice, and you don't have to do this, but like I feel like we have some distance between us and him, and kind of making this a little bit smaller is great. So here is another smoke effect, and in this particular effect there's some lightning strands happening in it as well. So we want to change our blend mode so it can match our lightning, and it looks pretty good. Like it kind of like looks like instead of like being like two effects here, it looks like all one effect, right? Let's kind of like that. Boom, that looks nice. Maybe we can even bring this over a little bit more, extend it like that. Looking awesome. You know, like you want to go for realism, right? You don't want to bring attention to your VFX. It's like, oh wow, look at that VFX, look what they can do with it. No, you want to be like, man, that looks pretty good. Like how they do that, right? So want to make it as real as possible, and it's looking sweet. Maybe we can even time it to bring it a little bit more that way, and it's looking good. All right, so the next thing that's happening here is like what's happening to the hammer, right? So it's making contact, we have a reaction, the hammer is heating up. So we use a glow effect from our laser folder inside the Blockbuster Starter Pack, and as you can see here, here's a good example of where you can use our effects in different ways. So we have a laser effect that can be used, like let's say for lightsabers or a thruster of an engine. In our case, it's going to be our hammer heating up, and it's having a nice little glow reaction going on too. So let's just trim that down to size, and you can see here that's looking pretty good. So what I want to do now is center it over the hammer. All right, so you can see where if here in Filmora, if you're using your mouse to kind of move the file around but it's not landing exactly where you want it, there's two other ways you can move your file around. One, you can play with your position. The X and Y axis is here. Just hover over and you can see you can kind of move it like that. That looks pretty cool. You can get a little bit more meticulous with it like that. Looks pretty cool. And in other case where you can use on your actual keyboard, you have your up and down side arrows here. That's what how I'm moving it right now, and that's actually pretty good. That looks good. So you can see there's a nice orange glow here. It's sort of hiding everything that's underneath it. To make sure that we actually land it where we want to, we can kind of come back to our timeline and turn off the other effects by hitting these little eye icons, and then blinds it. And you can see like, okay, now I can see exactly where this is at. That's looking really good. I like it. So let's bring our effects back in, and looking sweet. Since we already are in our effects panel for this particular laser effect here, we want to also change our blend mode from normal to screen. And as you can see now, it blends in a little bit more natural, right, with the lightning and the smoke and the little electricity happening on the hammer. We can almost see through the effect and actually see our hero. Here, this is kind of giving us a little bit more realistic vibe. This is pretty much how we build the very first scene of our promo video. Nice and easy, drag and dropping, stacking our effects on top of each other and messing around with the blend modes. So let's jump over to our next scene, right? And the next scene, you can see that we a little bit more level with him. Here we're in a bird's eye view. Now we're more closer to him, we're more level with him. And what's happening in this scene here is the camera is sort of moving around him. So our actor here is still like the Statue of Liberty. He's actually holding that pose really well, and the camera is moving. So this is going to give you an indication of some steps you got to take during your editing. Let's come to the top of the scene, and the next thing you want to do is rebuild what's happening here, the lightning coming down and the smoke and the glow of the hammer, right? Here's a good choice here, and this is from the Blockbuster Starter Pack, the electricity folder. We could drag and drop this right into our timeline, and as you can see, it lays right over, right? So we need to kind of position this guy here. So we double click on it, come over here, move it right up. It's like, okay. And I'm thinking, like, remember how I talked about screen direction going from left to right, and this actually looks pretty cool. But this is lightning coming down from the sky. So for me, I feel like I want it to come a little bit more straight forward. So I'll bring it over like that, move it over, and it's making contact with the hammer. Okay, that's looking pretty good, right? I'm gonna use my arrow on my keyboard, decided to kind of get it more where I want it. That's looking pretty good. All right, so now remember how I told you the camera is moving, right? So it's going to give you an indication of some of the steps you got to take in editing. So as I move it around, it's maintaining the contact. But when I get over here, because my camera is moving this way and my actor is still, the file itself, you can see how it's going to lose contact here. If I go to the end of the scene, it's like, whoa, it's way over there, right? So we need to keyframe this so it can maintain the illusion of the lightning keeping contact with the hammer. One way you can do that in Filmora is when you kind of get to the point where you want to start your keyframe. Let's kind of start it right there. You can see here in the effects control panel, we're in our video tab. Over here in the animation tab, it'll probably show up like this. When you click on it, it'll have all these presets of animating and keyframe and stuff like that. You want to kind of come to the customize here and start your keyframe here. You can add a keyframe by clicking the plus sign. You can see right here in the effects file, a keyframe appears. You want to kind of go forward, right, and get to where it's like, okay, it's losing contact. So now let me come to my X and Y axis and bring it back, lift it up a bit, looking nice. Okay, I want to go forward a little bit more. It's like, all right, it's lost contact. Let me bring it back, lift it up a little bit. That's looking sweet. Let me go forward a little bit more. It's like, okay, that's way off the hammer here. Let's bring it back, lift it up a bit. And just to kind of get to the end of the scene, all right, and let's just bring it in, lift it up a bit, and voila, that's looking good. So when you scroll back through, you can see how it maintains contact with the hammer, giving the illusion that it's really coming down from the sky and it's just landing on that hammer. Really cool. Okay, the next thing you want to do is change the blend mode on the lightning effect so it can match the lightning in the other scene. So you want to go from the animation tab right back to your video tab into your effects panel. You can see the blend mode set to normal. We want to go to our drop down menu and go set it to screen. As you can see here, it's giving a little bit more realistic vibe here in the scene itself. So as I scroll through, and that's looking nice. The next thing I want to do is bring in that little cloud. That's sort of like a little explosion happening here when it's making contact here. So I come back to my effects folder, click on the electricity files, like, okay, cool, bring that down right over my file, trim it, looks nice. Now what I need to do is land it right on his head, right? It's like kind of like Special K has his head in the clouds, and believe me when I tell you, sometimes he really does. And he has, sometimes you can see him think about things and there's a little explosion going on in his head. All right, don't tell him I said that. But we want to bring this up right over to our hammer here and maybe scale down a bit. But keep in mind, right, we're more level with him. We are closer to him. So our effects here can be a little bit bigger than what it looked like in the other scene, right, where we were further from him. But that's looking pretty good here. So I want to change the blend mode from normal to screen on this one as well. And that's looking good. So when I scroll through it, it's like, yeah, there's a lot happening there when that lightning comes down and hits the hammer. Looks pretty good. Maybe I can even lift it up a little bit more. Nice. Come to my axis here. Looking good. Scale it down a bit. Just kind of make it look like these little lightning things are touching the hammer here. Boom. Right about there. That's looking nice. See? Bam. Sweet. So the next thing we want to do is come back to the top of the scene. Like, what else is happening here, right? So we want to bring in our laser effect where that's creating that glow. So we're going to drag and drop that in. Nice. Awesome sauce, right? So now we got to bring our glow up to where the hammer is at. Just about there. I'll use my keyboard, the arrows on my keyboard, to kind of position it where I want. And that looking really nice right there. But keep in mind, right? So now the camera is moving, right? So we want to make sure that our glow maintains contact with the hammer, because when I scroll through it, you can see all of a sudden it's over here, so like over his head, right? So we're gonna bring it down, bring it over here, and it's like we're gonna keyframe this, get to a spot where we need to start the keyframe, which is about right there. So we go to our animation tab, hit our keyframe, and go forward. It's like, okay, now let's bring our glow back, maybe a little up, and let's go forward a little bit more. Okay, let's bring it back a little up. looking good. And slide it more this way. It looks pretty good right there. Let's go forward a little bit more to the end of the scene and bring it like that. Wow, how cool is that? That really looks like he's holding a torch, right? Man, Lady Liberty. That's what I'm talking about. All right, so let's bring it, scroll it back through the scene and make sure that is maintaining contact, and that's looking pretty good. So the next thing we want to do is come right back to our video tab, which is our effects folder, and we see our blend mode. We want to change the blend mode from normal to screen, and as you can see here, it's really creating a different feel here, right? Once we change that, again, because it's a glow effect, right? It's blending into our scene a little bit more organically, and you're going to hear me say things like organic, realistic, and everything, and that's simply because, you know, you want to just make sure that as you're just piecing your VFX together, you're not sort of cheating yourself of the realism that you really want. All right, taking these little steps here helps a lot in understanding how things blend together. Awesome stuff. So the next thing we want to do is like, what else is happening in this scene? We repeated everything that was in the first shot now in the second shot, but notice how it just looks empty, right? Here we want to add some electricity to his body. You got the lightning coming down, hitting the hammer. There's some reaction going on here. It's glowing up, but then what else is happening? So we got some electricity sort of floating around his body, having a reaction to what's happening in the sky. Come back to our effects folder, and this is a really cool effect right here. We can drag and drop it, sort of like bring it right, trim this down to size here, and sort of kind of make sure like this is making contact with his body here. So we kind of scrolling through it, and right about, so I like see how like, see this arc thing right here. Okay, cool. This is really cool here. So we want to kind of bring this up, and it's like, okay, this is sort of wrapping around his body here. Something's happening here and is wrapping around him. I'll kind of scale it down a bit. You know, this is a little bit more of an artistic choice. You can kind of scale it up and make it a little bit bigger if you wanted to, but for me, I feel like this is actually pretty cool. This is something that's wrapping around his body, and it's looking pretty nice, and it's flaring off everywhere. And so now what we're gonna do here is change our blend mode so the lightning here can match the lightning there. We're gonna change the blend mode here, go to screen, and it's kind of giving it a different look. So it's like looking pretty cool, right? It changes the glow and the light of it. So the next thing we want to do is like, what else can we do here? How much more can we make this awesome, right? In this particular file, I like this a lot too, right? Because it has like 3 lightning strands flaring out, but in the middle there's some space, there's a gap right here, right? And I was thinking like, oh, you know, maybe we can actually put his body in the middle of all that. So we just drag and drop this right into our timeline, trim it down to size here, and you can see as we kind of scroll through it, it's like, okay, it's a lot is happening here. It's just flaring all over the place, and what we're gonna do is kind of bring it down a bit, make sure it makes contact with him. That looks good. And let's scroll through it again. Let's see what is happening. So here is our gap, right? Here's our gap. So we can kind of bring this a little bit more like that. That looks good. And here we want to change our blend mode as well, and go, it's in normal. You can see the difference between some of the lightning here, and when we change the blend mode from normal to screen, now it blends in more naturally. Awesome. So the next thing I'm thinking about, like, what else is happening here, right? So we have, like, you know, lightning coming down from the sky, you know, like the hammer's heating up, and all these cool lightning stuff is happening around him. He's like all full of static and everything. You don't want to get next to him or he's going to shock you. But there was some smoke here, so his body's actually touching the earth, right? So maybe here on the earth there's some things heating up. There's smoke going on over here. We go back to our effects folder. We have from our explosion folder inside the Blockbuster Starter Pack, we have this file called the blast, right? The blast is like this, it's like a blast of smoke just coming out. The cool thing about effects, there's many different applications and films that you can use them for. It's really up to you, the visionary, the creative, the editor, to see how you can apply some of these effects into your scene, right? You can take something that was meant for something else and repurpose it and use it for what you want. So I'll trim this down to size. And now in our smoke is in the scene here, you can see it has like a black kind of color to it. First, we want to bring it down. It's like, okay, that looks pretty good. It's touching the earth and around his feet and all. And it's not matching the smoke that's up here, right? That's because we changed the blend mode of the smoke that's up on the hammer, and what we need to do is change the blend mode here. So it's not that the file itself has like the wrong color. This could be like black smoke in a house, or impact, or crater impact, or something like that. But for this scene here, we want to change our blend mode into a little bit different color here, and you can see how it sort of blends in naturally, right? It's not bringing the attention of like, oh, smoke and everything. It's just like it feels like it's all part of the event that's happening here. So that's looking pretty good. So I think finally we can add one more thing here, right? What else is happening here? We have all this open field. You imagine all the wind is gusting around, everything, a lot of debris flying up from the ground and all. And on the Blockbuster Starter Pack in our destruction folder, we have some what they call like the large scale destruction, right? So like ambers floating around, little sparks or something like that, you know. And depending how you want to use it, there's a lot of different ways this can make your scene pop off the screen pretty much. But let's drop this right into our timeline here. Kind of bring it to the scene, scroll it and trim it down, come right over. It's like, oh wow, that looks pretty tight here, right? When you look at the ambers floating around, it doesn't kind of look like it belongs in this scene, right? One way, again, we could change that, right? These are like little glows effects, right? We want to change the blend mode from normal to screen, and you can see it makes it more subtle here. It just kind of brings it a more subtle vibe to it versus like in your face, these little red dots everywhere. It looks pretty good, and this is pretty much how we built our scene here. So I hope that you enjoy this tutorial. Keep in mind that as an editor, you have free range to use your mind, your imagination, and your vision, creativity to stack and build, drag and drop our effects into your timeline, stack them up, play with blend modes, keyframes, and take the time to really finesse it. And you can create really dynamic scenes just like you see on our website, and you too can be out there making big films. So thanks so much for watching. We really hope you enjoyed this one. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. Really hope that you enjoyed the tutorial. Make sure you subscribe, like, click on the bell icon so you can be alerted when the next one comes out. Also, when we share the good news of our new VFX packs coming out pretty soon. Remember the 3 cardinal rules of filmmaking. You are what you write, you are what you shoot, and you are what you edit. So with that said, go out there and make big films. See you soon.